So, hi, Fun Family. Very special guest today, and it is a second round for this person because I'm learning, and the more that I'm listening to other podcasts and the more that I'm learning, the more I kind of realised that what I was doing before probably wasn't the best way to do it. So, firstly, a massive thank you to our special guest. He's someone that I'm very privileged to have kind of run for and seconded for, and as a first AD is kind of like the lighthouse of the future of ADing for all the tech stuff. It's not pen and paper no more, it's changing. So I just want to say a big thanks for him to coming out. So if you could tell the listeners who you are and what is your job title on the call sheet.
Good morning, listeners. My name's Jay Lusser. I'm the first AD.
And what does a first AD do? What is it that you do? Describe.
So, your first AD is the coordinator on set when you're shooting. I put a schedule together based on information from the recce, from meetings with the director and the producer, and the DOP, and figure out the best way and sequence that we're going to shoot something, depending on the locations and all sorts of factors. And then on the shoot days themselves, run that schedule, make sure the information's passed around so that everyone's got everything ready that we need for the various shots, and coordinate the day. So it's a planning and logistics role.
Okay. And what does a normal job structure look like for you? How do you get it? What do you do at the beginning? Is the first day on set the first time that is it your first day on the job, or have you done stuff beforehand?
So it depends on the job. Usually, if it's a location job, there'll be a recce. If it's a studio job, there'll usually be a meeting followed by a pre-light. Not always a pre-light, but there'll be at least a day's worth of prep somewhere along the lines to put together the schedule. So if there's no pre-light, if there's a pre-light in a studio, the schedule will really get finalised on that day. There may have been some prep before that. It just depends on the scale of the job, really. So, on a location shoot, you'll be out on the recce with heads of department. So that'll be director, producer, DOP, art director, and then gaffer, grip, and any other relevant personnel who need to be. So if we've got SFX, stunts, wires, anything like that, then those HODs will be present as well. We'll go through the storyboards, the logistics of what we're shooting, and from that, gaining the information. Also, of course, the location manager as well, who runs the recce.
When you say they run the recce, what do you mean?
Can we do that again?
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm a bit nervous this morning, weirdly.
It's okay, well, probably because I've had you outside in the cold for the last 20 minutes, just freezing.
Let me just...
what was it?
Just pick me up from...
Because you kind of brought yourself in there, so that's... I can...
Let's... fuck this.
I can start again.
Yeah, let's start again from the... I don't know, from the prep question. Let's just go from that again.
Okay, fine.
Oh, sorry.
It's not a problem. Yeah, it's not a problem. So, what does a job look like? When does it start? How do you get into it? And what is it that you're trying to achieve?
So before the shoot day, there'll be at least a day's worth of prep, depending on what the job's like, whether it's a location job or a studio job. On a location job, there'll be a recce where heads of department, being the director, producer, myself, DOP, art director, gaffer, grip, and then any other speciality departments like special effects, stunts, wires, that kind of thing will be with us. Location manager will be there to show us the locations, and we'll discuss the storyboards, what needs to be shot, and then between the heads of department work out any limitations or parameters within that affect how the schedule goes together. So might be time of day, which direction the light's coming from, might be availability of location, might be all sorts of things. And then from that recce, a schedule will get put together. and then we'll turn up on the shoot. There'll be some other discussions around that as well. So it'll be at least one day, sometimes more, depending on how complicated the schedule is and whether an office day is required to go through everything with other departments who aren't there on the recce, like heads of makeup and wardrobe, etc. If it's a studio day, then you don't really get a recce unless it's a big build. You need to work something out and treat it like a location. But usually there'll be conversations on the phone, storyboards will be sent out. You might have a meeting with the director. If there's a pre-light day, then a lot of the finer points of the schedule will get hashed out on that pre-light day when you've got all the relevant people, the same heads of department, in the room together.
Have you done a schedule before the pre-light? So on a build day, have you kind of got a sense of what you're doing, or do you just turn up on that day and kind of go, right?
Yeah, often you've got a sense. It really depends on the job. I'll have seen the storyboard, had some conversations and roughed something out to kind of give us an idea of what the shooting order will be.
Do you ever get told that are there ever elements of time where you're like, you're not forced into it, but you kind of, there's only certain times that your schedule is already predetermined? Yeah,
that's actually really helpful in a lot of ways because it's like getting a corner piece in a jigsaw. If you know you can only shoot with that particular actor for that number of hours, and you've got to do it when the sun's in a certain position so it's not affecting the shot.
Yeah.
And these are the particular hours that you can be in that location. For example, those three factors come together to say, okay, well, we can only shoot this between 2 and 5. So that sits there in the schedule, and then let's build everything else around it. So in that kind of way, restrictions like that can be really useful because it focuses the mind of everybody and goes, okay, so this has to happen at this time.
Yeah.
It's not possible for it to happen at any other point in time. So
what's the best thing to do before? What's the best thing to do after?
Exactly. Okay. What's the most time efficient way of moving ourselves around that linchpin?
Nice.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's a good thing to have that. I mean, it helps because otherwise you're sort of looking at a bunch of storyboard frames which you could shoot in any order whatsoever, and it's looking for reasons to order it in a certain way.
Okay. What are some reasons?
Kids' hours are always a good one because you've got a limited amount of time that you can shoot with children. Time of day from the cameraman to say the light's best here at such and such time of the day, or even more helpful, we absolutely can't shoot it at this time of day because the light's like this.
Oh, so also as useful as this, it can be done. Knowing when it can't be done is just as useful.
Yeah,
okay.
It can be just as useful. I mean, sometimes it becomes impossible to avoid those moments where the light's at its worst. But usually often those things can be dealt with, unless you're on, 15th floor of an office block and the sun's right there and there's no way of blocking it out.
Yeah.
Then there's usually a way around most of these things, but it's good to take on as many of those restrictions as you can, so as not to cause grief for other departments when you're shooting. Other restrictions would be getting people ready. So you don't first shot of the day, you don't want it to be hundreds and hundreds of people if you can avoid it, because it means very, very early start.
And pre-calls and
it's unpleasant for those doing the job, and and it costs money for the producer. So those kind of things. Yeah, every job's different, but those are some of the examples of things that might affect why you're shooting in a certain way.
Because I guess I spoke to someone else and they were like, you tend to normally start on the wide. But actually, just talking about that, actually, if you are out in a field and you've got hundreds and hundreds of people, maybe you build to your big wide, not just an average wide, but that's like a super wide. Are there little rules and are there little rules that you've got in your mind when you're kind of doing a schedule? You go, I always like to do that before this. Yeah, there's a continuity factor in that. Is if you're establishing something in a wide and then going in for mids and close-ups and certainly action continuity, then you do want to shoot the wide first, because you don't want to tie yourself into something in a mid or a close-up, which then when you come out in a wide you realise looks like a mistake.
Sometimes it might not matter too much, in terms of the continuity, but you don't want to be kind of hamstringing yourself with those sort of things. So yeah, I mean, that's a kind of good rule of thumb of scheduling, is what we go wide and then push in for coverage, because it establishes all the actions.
Nice. Now, that building of a schedule, if you're a busy man, you're already confirmed on a job for that 1 week, you can send your second to the recce for another job. What kind of things are you looking for that second to come away with? What information do you like to have? Because obviously being there, you can hear the conversations, you can ask the conversations. What kind of stuff would you like your second to come away with from the schedule? There's certain elements of a thing that you're like, I have to know these questions.
It will depend on the board. So before sending someone else on a recce, I'll have had a look at the storyboard and I'll have tried to have a chat with the producer.
Okay.
And if there's specifics that I need to find out about, then I'll have spoken to the second and asked them to check specific things. Otherwise, it's like like we were saying, it's about just going through each board, figuring out where we are. Sketches of ground plans and location photos are always really useful to then have a chat with the second afterwards to go, okay, so we're in this room, but we need to shoot this way first and then that way for this reason.
Little hand sketches.
Hand sketches are fine. Anything really, anything. Even better if the location manager's got a proper ground plan that you can scribble on.
Okay.
That's always useful. Obviously, depends on the location you're in. Some will have that. Some locations provide that. Some don't. But just those sort of questions. So, from the DOP, what their preferences are, what their limitations are. Talking, all the kind of conversations then with the location manager on a location about where everything's going to go, how close you can get the Jenny, whether we're recording sound, where we're going to put the agency, all those sort of things.
The nuts and bolts of the logistics.
Bogs and bins.
Yeah. Bogs and bins.
Yeah,
nice.
That sort of thing, which is, although it's it's the location manager's department, it's always very useful to know and to have input in, and to say, well, we can't put any tech vehicles there because of the shot that we're doing, which looks out of the window at that bit of the street. So we need to keep that bit clear at this time of the day. Those sort of things. It's just the details of making sure that you stood in the location and it works. You're not having to move things out of your way every 5 minutes, ideally.
Is that an important factor of how far in advance are you thinking? So when you turn up in the morning, have you already got the day in your head, or are you kind of thinking, well, the first 3 shots are here?
On the recce or on the shoot day?
I guess more so the shoot day, because I guess the recce you're kind of figuring it out. But
yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the shoot day, ideally, I want to have a kind of conversation with members of the crew who weren't there on the recce. So, for example, the camera team, so the first and second AC, playback, to let them know what our shooting sequence is. Recap with the DOP and the gaffer to make sure they're up to speed. Talk to the camera teams. Go, okay, so these are the places we're going to be shooting within this location. That area there is what I think is safe for you and your gear.
Nice.
And for playback, we'll put you over there. That way you don't have to move for the day. Those kind of things. Just if people feel, I always think if people feel included and feel like you've thought about what they're doing to their benefit, then they're sort of a bit more receptive if things...
No one wants to move 5 times just because you...
And if things do go a bit Pete-on, then and you have to move, you have to move, but it's that's something you can deal with at the time, hopefully.
Nice.
And most people on a film set are really lovely, and they want to be included and they want to do their best job. So it's just about making sure that they feel like you're not pushing them to one side for any reason, really. But it's certainly, so turning up on set, I'd have the day in my head, the kind of the full day in my head, and try and get that recap that information with the crew. They will have had a call sheet and a schedule by that point by email, but they might not have read it.
They might have been working
beyond the first couple of shots. So it's just useful.
When's lunch? When's wrap?
We're here. Then we go upstairs, and then we come back down, and then we do this bit. And while we're doing that bit, that's being tented out, and all those sort of things. So they retain about some of that information, and they'll need to ask.
Just shut off.
But it's just it's kind of nice to keep people in that loop as early as possible.
And what else happens on a shoot day that you that a first AD should be on top of? Things that you kind of do that little nuggets of knowledge.
It's as much about thinking ahead as anything else. Mm-hmm. It's about. I think it's about just saying, okay, so we've got one more shot in here, and then we're going into that room. Is it, have we cleared everything out that we need to? Is it ready? Of talking to the gaffer, say, is there anything you can be getting ahead with, for that, for that area to be ready and lit. Just keeping everything flowing so that you're not haven't got unexpected delays, unplanned delays. There's always going to be, when you move from one location to another, there's always going to be an amount of time that's going to take to move yourself and the camera and through and get the frame approved and check for dressing and all that kind of thing. But you don't want anything else to get in the way of that.
Check for dressing.
Set dressing. There might be a particular thing that the client's looking for, the director's going to want to look at the set dressing and adjust things potentially as well. And as much as you can do that off camera, there's always going to be an element of fiddling when you're on camera as well.
Did you ever is there any benefit from having people look in the set, or is it better to look in the camera? Depends?
It depends. I mean, it's always worth the director looking with the designer and the props team just to see that they're happy with everything. It may be worth walking some of the agency through, but usually best just to show them on monitor, because if you're looking by eye at a set, you might be looking at things that you're never going to see on camera. So you're kind of giving
a false representation of the frame.
Yeah, you're not giving them the frame. They might be looking at things that they don't need to be worrying about. And people love to worry about things that they don't need to worry about.
Yeah.
The other thing, on a shoot day, the thing that the AD team needs to keep on top of is just to make sure that you've got any talent, animals, people who are required on set are well informed in advance that they're going to be required. So whether that's a cast member, whether that's an animal handler, whether that's a stunt coordinator, and all other departments, to make them aware that we're going to be approaching to that location. We're going to go in there in half an hour, or unit move coming up. Let's start packing away anything that's not being used. Let's get ready to move. All those sort of things. It's just thinking in advance. Because it's no good finishing a shot and saying, all right, what should we do now?
Well, there's a load of stuff that we could do. Yeah. Nice. And do you ever get to, you're on a set and you have a plan in place and it makes perfect sense and it all works logistically, but then actually you get on set and a director or a DP suddenly goes, oh, that would be a better thing. How flexible is... What's the how flexible can you be on set to then still be efficient? Did you make that call at the time and you go, actually, if it's going to save me 5 minutes by doing that's not scheduled?
That happens all the time.
Okay.
You're always having to think on your feet. It's it's not, I suppose, not rare that you shoot everything as per schedule all the time, but it's certainly not. It doesn't happen all the time. There could be all sorts of things that might throw a spanner in the works. It might be a key prop that's been changed, or something that's been thrown in by, either a creative or a thought the director's had, or just something that for some reason isn't ready on time. Or there could be all sorts of things that get thrown in. And I think that so long as you've got all the information in your schedule about what's required in what area, and you can have a quick conversation with the other HODs and just figure out that if you do change things around, then you go to that location instead of that location, is it going to have a knock-on effect that you can't see? it might be, if you're in locations that require a move between them, it might be something to do with vehicle logistics for one of the departments of having the kit in the right place, and they're leapfrogging vehicles. And if you bypass that location to there, it's going to throw everything out. Usually, it's not. It's rare that there's something that completely prevents you from changing things up at all. Usually, things are achievable, but it might cost you in time. So then that's another conversation about, well, if we can change this up because this has come out, but actually it's going to cost you an hour.
And who's ultimately then, is that the AD?
Well, it's the producer. It's a conversation with the producer. It's letting them know that that's the situation. This needs changing for that reason, and we can't make that change and keep the day within the hours that we said we would. It will be a delay, but it's unavoidable that we need to do that. And then it might come back, the producer might think about it, talk to the director and go, actually, let's not worry about it. We'll stay as we were. Or they push the button and you do it.
So kind of finding out all HODs, getting that question, then ultimately going up the chain of command to the director producer and saying, well, look, this is where that, giving them the options.
Yeah. It's sort of quite rare, I think, for an AD to make a unilateral decision on something, because the impetus for that decision will have come from somewhere, and the knock-on for that will affect someone. So those people need to be involved in the conversation. It's as much about coordinating with everyone on set and making sure that the decisions that are being made are beneficial to the shoot day as a whole and the shoot processes as a whole. Yeah.
Nice. And then getting into the industry, really simple, just turned up day one, I'm a first AD? Or is that not how it happens?
I think some people might. But
so what was your route in? Where did you start?
I came from a theatre background, and moved across when I was I was between 29 and 30.
Which is a good age to come in, or was it just the right time for you personally with the experience that you had?
No, I don't think it's particularly a good age to come in at the end in your late 20s. I think it's probably I think you should be coming into being a runner in your late teens, early 20s, ideally. That just gives you more scope to sort of learn and expand, and gives you a sort of longer career to develop yourself in, really. No, I came in, I was working in technical theatre, decided to make a change across. I knew that I was working in the latter stage as a production manager, and that's quite similar. It's much more similar in role to an AD in film than a production manager in film. Or certain parts of it are. So that was
organisation, budget thing. Anything.
Yeah. I've always thought of running a film set as in first AD to be all very similar to running a technical rehearsal in theatre. It's about putting. It's working through each scene, all the cues within a scene, tightening it up, making sure it's running well, getting it all set down in theatre in such a way that it can be repeated. So you can take that show off on tour. You can run it for however long within a theatre. You know that every night those cues are going to be hit at the same point. Everyone knows what they're doing. The point of that technical rehearsal, culminating in a full dress rehearsal, is that you get that all worked out. And so, though, if you chop it up into bits, for film, sort of individual shots, then you do the same thing. You work out how all the cues work, and it's repeatable to an extent, because for that chunk you'll have coverage. So you'll have a wide, your wide shot, two shot, singles, whatever other coverage you need, and within that little microcosm, you need to be able to repeat it. You need the cues to happen in the same place, and be that vehicles in the background, be that background extras, whatever's going on.
Lifting a glass of wine on the same line.
But then once you've done that and you've shot it in its different ways, you never go back to it. So it's more single use in that way. But effectively, the steps are the same. And in film world, you have a continuity script supervisor who are gold dust and will keep an eye on all of the things that you're not able to look at because you're looking at other things, and make sure that all those beats are being hit as well. So again, it's a team effort to make sure that everything's in the right place. Same as in theatre, you'll have you've got your the production manager's running it, and you've got your stage manager and your DSM who's calling the show. You've got your deputy stage manager who's on the book, who's effectively calling all the cues. Your assistant stage managers and stagehands who are then dealing with the props and scene changes. And then you get into World of Flymen, who move scenery around, kind of up and down, your board ops, your lighting and sound departments and everything. But it's all sort of all coordinated together.
And then you'd be organising that throughout the technical recce. So it's
the technical rehearsal, yeah. So you're working. You're making sure you're stopping and starting, and you're saying actually. We're setting this lighting cue at that point, this sound cue at that point. This is where the scene change is going to happen.
It gives you a great confidence to be able to come on a film set and just be able to tell people what to do. I guess or not what to do. Sorry, as in being confident enough that you can organise and plan the day, because you've come an 18-year-old that's just come out as a film school probably doesn't have that confidence to be able or experience to manage a film set. Yeah. So was there a lot that you took from theatre that went into ADing, or was it just like the cream at the top?
No, it's lots. I mean, I had to learn a new language coming into film. Yeah. Like I say, it's in theatre you deal kind of with the whole picture. It's eventually kind of you do the whole show in 2 hours or whatever it is, and everything happens within that 2 hours, and then you debrief afterwards and you go through it. Now in film world, it's very rare to do a whole piece in that short amount of time and cover everything. Some live work you do, but again, that's a lot. As with this, there's a lot of rehearsals involved in that. But in in commercials world, it's microcosms. You do that close up and that close up and this little bit of coverage, and you go to another room and you do that bit of action. And but I suppose the nuts and bolts of what you're doing are very much the same. The strangest thing, I think, stepping onto a film set with the way the language is that film sets are much, much messier than a theatre stage. Because the theatre stage, you're designed to... You as an audience, you sit in the auditorium and you watch the stage and you see the picture. Now, all around that, above it, to the sides, below, up front, behind you, above you, there's all the lights. You've got microphones and speakers and stuff set up, but it's an image that you're looking at. And some shows don't really change set at all. Others do massively, but it's it's all designed to happen within that picture. Whereas in film world, you've got massive lights here and silks and frames and this, that, and the other, and you got a prop man up a ladder dangling something over the step. And and obviously you're looking through the lens, and that's what you see. And if you step back from that, it's just the picture's ruined. If you like. So it's that was an interesting thing to experience stepping onto a film set, because I'd never really thought about that before.
Did you come in as an AD? Did you go from theatre into...
No, came in as a runner. When I stepped across, I did some work experience at various places just to kind of get a foot through the door. And then when I came in,
what does that mean? Work experience. What did you go in house? Were you on set?
No, I was
unpaid, paid.
It was. I did a stint on Channel 4's live breakfast show called Rise, and that was through some contacts I had who were working in comedy.
In the theatre.
So when I was working in theatre, I was also touring with comedians. I was also doing corporate lighting work. You know, there's you throw your hand in at a lot of things when you work in theatre. It's a very sort of collaborative industry. I think maybe that's the wrong word. It's one where you can quite happily jump between lighting, sound, chippying, stage management.
An immersive experience of.
Yeah, sort of. I wouldn't say, it's what does it say?
Master of
none. I'm trying to think what the first half of that phrase is. Jack of all trades.
Yeah.
It's not quite that, because you can be master of one and still work in others in a theatre. But I sort of lost my thread of what we were talking about. But
so you're in there, you got your contacts to get you into Rise.
So I did a stint on that, and that was my first experience of studio live camera work, which was
even has its own language as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That was closer to what I'd been doing, because you'd have a script meeting very early in the morning, about 4:00, and then go through the script. Work out the segments, work out where the camera positions were going to be for the segments, mark up the script. So it was kind of like doing a technical rehearsal in like hour and a half.
Okay.
Which, usually a technical rehearsal in theatre is like a week or at least a couple of days. So it was quick. But it was formulaic in a way for them, because they knew that in this kind of sequence the camera positions will be here. In this sort of sequence, this is something slightly different, and we're going to do this. So in that sense, that was interesting, because then that was a short technical rehearsal, some specific line runs and rehearsals, and then you go live just before 7:00 and you do a 2-hour show.
The rest of the day is yours. Thank you very much.
The rest of the day was my own after 9:00, which was lovely. Nice little stroll back from Queensway across Hyde Park in the morning and smashing. And then staying up late to watch EastEnders.
Omnibus. Thanks very much.
Yeah, that was odd. It kind of in bed by 5:30, 6 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, wow.
Feeling like I was 7 again. Going, Mum, I'm playing, I want to play. I'll go to bed. Anyway.
Well, I'm guessing the alarm's got to be going off at like 3 o'clock.
2:30.
2:30. God.
Yeah.
It's the middle of the night.
It is the middle of the night. So anyway,
did you get in? So that was just some work experience. That was not paid. That was just to get a taste.
Unpaid work experience, just to get a sense of what the industry's like. And then I did a couple of things like that. Sort of going into a TV gallery to watch a recording of something. And
whilst you were still doing theatre, or had you?
Still doing theatre, still working. Or I had to earn some money at that point, so I was still doing theatre, still doing the lighting work. The corporate lighting work was a good one to have at that stage, because it was you'd sort of do 3 possible shifts. A lot of it was in museums, so it would be in the evenings in museums. A lot of them have parties, big corporate functions, hundreds of people, full dinners, dancing, all sorts. And you'd go in, if it was a particularly big one, you'd go in at 6:00 in the morning and you'd do a pre-rig of some lights, which had to be safe and out of the way for the public. For the public during the day. So you'd do work from sort of 6 till 10, and then you'd go back at 5:00 in the afternoon. And if you ever do go to next time you're in the Natural History Museum or the Science Museum or something, if you're there right at the tail end of the day when they're making those announcements, like the museum will close in 10 minutes. Keep an eye out.
You jumping in a bit with a helmet on.
Have a look into the dark corners. you might see some people in t-shirts and fleeces ready to push flight cases into position, or roll tables in, and people ready to bring the ovens and all the kitchen stuff in. So then you'd have about an hour and a half from 6 till 7:30 maybe, to get it all finished and focused and ready. And one person would stay on site as a duty tech from the lighting department, and all the other departments would have their people as well. And then he'd come back at midnight and he'd pull it all out and be done by like 2 a.m. And by theatre standards, that was good money, you know. But actually, the rate for doing all of that without the duty, like if you just did the 3 shifts, was about as much as I could get as a runner in commercials.
Wow.
So there was a financial incentive to move across the world, but it was really good. It was good work. It was good fun work and lovely people to work with, and it was really flexible as well. So it enabled me then to go off and I did a little low budget feature film that I found on shooting people.
As a AD, as a runner,
this was as a second AD.
Okay.
But no one really knew what a second AD did. Certainly I didn't.
I'll take it.
So I was sort of second AD / continuity on that. There was nobody really, I think, on that film had a particularly clear idea of what their role was. So
can you learn from that kind of experience?
You can, because you need to get it done. And there was, I think some people on there had more ideas, more concept of what we were supposed to be doing than others. I mean, certainly the director did, but even he was quite inexperienced. Of course you learn. You learn by doing the wrong thing a lot of the time.
Oh, that's why I don't do it like that.
Yeah. So I did that, and then...
How long was that for? A week? 2 weeks?
No, it was like 3 weeks or something.
Wow.
3 weeks. But it was based down in Brighton, where my mum and dad live. So
Perfect.
I didn't have to spend anything on accommodation. It was a lost leader, but I was able to say to my other employers, I'm not available for these 3 weeks, without any real question about why. They'd be like, okay, so I'd go and book some work in for when I was going to be finished. And it'd take a little bit of a hit, but I was lucky in that respect. Had a little bit of savings to be able to do that.
So was that like a little taster to kind of go, what does the film side look like instead of the theatre? Or had you already kind of sussed out that you were thinking about making a move sideways?
I'd already sort of figured out that I was going to make that move. That was useful to see, to kind of get that experience. But I think it was only really when I started getting on set as a runner and I sort of fell into commercials that I really started to understand the language of what we were doing. And it was sort of, it just sort of happened that I fell into commercials rather than features or long form. But it suited me because I could do, even though it was, when I first started, it was really quiet. Didn't get much work to begin with. It took a while to start getting back on set. I could still do the corporate lighting stuff on the side. And so the only difficulty was sometimes if I had to drop a lighting gig last minute because a film thing had come in. But like I said, the company I was working with then, it was only one company at that stage. They were really understanding and really sort of helpful with it. And there was a couple that I had to sort of knock back the film jobs because I knew I'd be dropping them in it if I didn't do that. But then also had a great friend who runs a senior construction company, which was just setting up really at that time, moving into new premises, and he was really helpful to me because I was able to come in to help him out. I was helping him out, he was helping me out. I'd do the odd shifts there. If I was quiet and I wasn't doing any work, then I'd be able to go in there for a week and work on something, work through something with him. And if I had just had the odd day here and there, I could, he'd have a bit of work for me. So those kind of things were really, really useful, particularly in a way because they were a step aside from the film industry. And I learned over time that you can step away from a film set. You can not be on set for a couple of months, and then come back on, and no one will question. No one will question that you've been away for 2 months. Yeah, there'll be the questions: have you been busy? What you've been up to? But actually,
what was the last job we worked on?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you step away for a while, or if it's quiet that you're not working for a while. When you come back and things pick up, it's a little bit like a big group of friends who are very familiar with one another, who it's like, great, oh, nice to see you. And it's kind of, you pick up from where you left off. So
how does that, like, I actually got asked that question by a film student the other day, and they're like, how do you ever get used to those? So let you say you have 2 months off. Actually, those 2 months off might be that you've had no work at all.
Yeah.
And they asked me, how do you get used to it? How do you kind of work through those?
Simple answer is no.
Yeah.
I mean, all my theatre life was freelance. So, what did I work out? It's something like, I've been freelance for, it'll be 24 years this year.
Wow.
Yeah, 24 years. And it gets slightly easier when you're quiet for a bit, but not that much easier. It's still it's still really nerve-wracking if you haven't got something in the diary to come back to. Even as much as you rationalise it and you say, you go, oh, actually, this financial year's been okay, and we've done all right, and I've got enough savings to keep me going. You're actually still sitting there going, oh, really, it'd be nice if I knew that there was something coming up. Because we all get it. We all have, the 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes longer, when you're sitting there going, oh, suddenly that low budget promo is looking very attractive there. Just because you just want to do something. The worst thing is you get rusty. And the first day back on set after
Christmas break or whatever.
Christmas break or a few weeks or a holiday or whatever, and you're a little bit like, well, what do we do here?
Sorry, is it turnover or rollover?
How does this work? Because you forget things, of course you do, yeah. But yeah, it never gets easy. It gets easier a little bit over time, but you just have to be calm about it. And you have to be stoic about it, because there are some things you can do, like you can start phoning around, you can send your CV out, you can get in touch with people, find out what's going on. I hate networking. And I know a lot of...
Just because it's uncomfortable, or you just...
Yeah, it's deeply uncomfortable, and it's...
Hi, how are you? Yeah, I'm all right. Well, just give me some work. Yeah, it's like that. It's basically...
It's awful. I mean, it's... I've never felt comfortable doing it. Some people are better than others, but I bet you most freelancers out there feel the same. It's just, if you bump into someone on set or in the canteen at the studios or whatever, and you have a chat, it's lovely. You can talk about what you're up to, and then you're more current in their thoughts with when the next thing might come in. But to phone them up out of the blue, oh yeah, it's just
just phoning up to say hi.
Anything going on? Or can I come in and meet you?
Is it easier for work experience to do it because you can clearly see what they're trying to do, which is they're trying to get into the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're putting yourself out there, and I think if you're entry level work experience, that's what you're putting yourself out there as, saying, "Can I come and be on your set and help out?" Great, yeah, of course you can. Don't mind you asking that at all. But if you're a head of department, it's like,
totally different. Yeah.
Can I come and help out on your set?
Yeah.
We've already got an AD. It's much more difficult. So we fly by the seat of our pants a lot of the time, and the way you get more work is by working and by getting on with people, and then you get recommendations from various, from people to other people to say, oh, no, he was all right. Let's, you can try him out. Or sometimes you get work because someone else isn't available, and they might put you forward. And it's I can't say that I'm very much more proactive than that, and I've been very lucky in that as well. That there's been quiet times, but mostly it's pretty good. There's no guarantee it's going to last. So that's the other thing that you never really get used to.
Just thankful every day that you kind of get the call.
So yeah, if you're stepping into a world of freelancing, welcome to a world of insecurity. Save your taxes.
Have your January tax bill sorted.
Yes.
Done.
Oh yeah,
because that's not something you want to get into. we were. So I'm just going to go back a touch because you're kind of gone. You're doing a bit of work experience. You came into then commercials late 20s. What was then the route up into ADing? Did you already, having the background that you had, you kind of went, I know I want to be an AD, or was there a moment that you went, oh my God, I fucking love what that man / woman / AD is doing?
I'd given myself a target of first AD when I stepped in. I thought that's what, or at least that was my thought at the time, but it was sort of, it was conditioned with knowing that I needed to go on set and see what a first AD does and actually see whether it was the right decision. So that was the plan. And so as a runner on set, that's who I was looking at. I was looking at the first AD and I was looking at the second AD and the AD department and figuring out,
is it for me?
Is it for me? And what are they doing? How are they doing it? And is it for me? And it was, like I said, it was because it was so similar to what I had been doing. In many ways, it was then just about learning the language and figuring out what do they do differently. How would I use my skills to do what they're doing? And so I did about 2.5 years as a runner.
Okay.
And then I was 32 at that point. I was like
quite a small.
Yes.
It's a very short term, but I guess your past experience, you kind of was it quite tough, kind of coming in at that lower, having run theatre, coming in at that lower level. Was it quite a bitter, not a bitter pill, but was it a tough experience?
No, I don't think it was a bitter pill at all. I think it was fascinating and really interesting. And I took a lot. I took a lot away from that experience. But it was, I'd put myself in that role, so I was going to do that role. And I still remember some of those first jobs and some of the things we ended up doing. Like, it was like being in a valley in Hampshire somewhere and literally running up a 2-in-1 gradient with boxes of oranges, to try and get them from the bottom to the top.
To feed people, or were they props?
No, this was props. This was like all day, just running boxes of oranges up and down this hill in like kind of relay with that kind of thing. Just stupid stuff like that. But you just kind of sort of going, well, I would never be doing this in theatre. It's freezing. I'm outside, I'm running oranges up a hill, but this is kind of fun. Yeah. There's like doing a studio car commercial and it being a scene with 7 bloodhounds kind of sniffing around the car. That was the shot.
Nice.
Another cold day, and animal handler had been outside with them, make sure they were all right to come on set. Obviously it was a little bit cold for the bloodhounds outside, so they waited until they got on set before all 7 of them pissed all over the floor. And the car.
Oh no.
And in that situation you sort of look at it and go, well, yeah, that's got to be cleaned up. So who's got some rubber gloves? So, you just throw yourself into that. And it was a really interesting time, but I knew, kind of knew while I was doing it, that I wanted to step up. And I could see that being a second AD was very close to being a company stage manager in theatre, dealing with the cast and that kind of thing. And I was confident doing that from theatre days. So I was like, well, that's what I'm going to push for. I'm going to try and do this as soon as possible. And I made the decision then after 2.5 years. I was like, right, I'm gonna do this now, even though I might not know everything I need to know about it, and it's a bit scary. But I'm just gonna do this now, and this is what I'm gonna do. So I said, right, okay, no more running. I'm just gonna second. And I was lucky enough at that point that there were 2 or 3 other second ADs who just stepped up to firsting.
Oh wow!
And they were
good timing.
Yeah, they were like really. They were busy seconds, and which meant that it freed up. It created a vacancy with a couple of first ADs who I'd been working with and doing the odd bit of cover seconding for. So it meant I was very lucky at that stage, that point in time, that I could step up for those 2 ADs, and then they became my regular first for the next sort of 8 years, really. so that was the, and then that was the step up. I mean, it didn't start auspiciously. My first job as a full-time second was a massive pink promo, which started the morning after I got back from holiday.
Oh wow!
So my flight was due to land from Spain at like midnight, and it was delayed, so it didn't land until 2 a.m.
Oh god! Just drive straight to the.
Well, pretty much, and it was a 6 a.m. call at the Brixton Academy.
Classic 16-hour promo.
Yeah, well, multiple days as well, and big film first. Not a very communicative production team, presumably because they were slammed with getting everything ready. So this was the first big lesson of being a second AD. Is I turned up to that shoot morning unprepared, and
do you know what? I cannot believe that for a second. Knowing you as a first, and you like that. That taught me a really, really valuable lesson. I hadn't been sent the right info, and I hadn't pushed hard enough for it, and so I was chasing my tail from the get go on that job, and that kind of thing, where I was, I probably stepped up a little bit too soon, maybe had a little bit too much confidence in my own abilities, and that was a tricky shoot. That was a difficult shoot, and I got chewed out a little bit on that one, but boy did I learn some stuff. Good learning curve.
Really,
we spoke earlier about
learning curve.
Turning up as a first AD and having it in your head.
Yeah,
I guess it's just as important as a second.
Yeah,
that you have that info in your head as well when you turn up.
Yeah.
What's the first shot? It's this, and this. How long have I got? 2 hours to get these people?
I mean, exactly. Yeah, as a second, you should know that before you step on, because often as a second, you're one of the first people there with the hair and makeup and costume department, getting people ready before the first AD or many other people turn up. So that conversation the day before a shoot between a second and a first on commercials is really important, because that's often all the second gets before work starts.
There's no prep. It's
no, very, very rarely any prep for a second on commercials. So anyway, then we got that 8 years of that, and I think probably after about 4 years of seconding, I started doing little bits of firsting.
Make you a better second, or did it change anything?
Hard to say, really. I'm sure I took elements from those jobs into the other stuff I was doing, but those first few firsting jobs, or I say first few, that first couple of years of firsting jobs, I really hated it. It's
the role, or the experiences, or just everything?
Just the kind of the role and the way it was. I think it partly because of the lack of experience and finding out, trying to figure out how things work as a first, and the dynamics you need to work with on set was actually really hard, and particularly then because those kind of jobs and those scale of jobs that you're doing are usually very low budget, so you're sort of scrabbling around anyway. It took quite a long time to feel comfortable with it, but then that was I suppose I probably did about 4 years of side by side, bits of firsting, bits of seconding, before I decided to make the step up.
And knew when it was right to step up, or was it just did something else happen again that you're like, I
think what happened was I started to get a little bit complacent as a second. It started feeling like I've kind of done this. It's no longer. It's wrong to say it's no longer engaging me, because I was still enjoying it. I was having a lot of fun doing it, but I wasn't feeling challenged by it most of the time. So at that point, I was like, okay, it's time now. It's time to kind of jump out of my safety zone and go and step up to firsting. Yeah. So that was then, and that was about 6 years ago, something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And now getting confidence. Are there ever kind of jobs now that you get those little butterfly like that? You just still get nervous on some of them?
Of course, yeah.
So I know when we last spoke, you were doing something out abroad, you were over in Europe, and there was like some stuff that you were doing with the bus on the thing and all the rest of it. I was like, that sounds huge.
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, a lot of, there's bread and butter work, which is really lovely when you're working with people you know and you're doing something to a formula. And I've been doing quite a lot of food work in the last couple of years, and with some really nice directors, and it's lovely, and it's kind of a nice team, and it's all comfortable, and you know what you're dealing with, and it's a lovely day at work. But then, like you say, there's the big ones. And there's the big, complicated ones where you're out. Often, the one you're talking about was in Ukraine, and it was, there were all sorts of things, very, very tricky things going on. I think we had, 8 camera cranes over 6 days, shooting all sorts of locations, and it all culminated with, flying a bus off of 2 heavy lifting cranes.
Amazing.
At night. On an airfield,
the freezing cold. The glamour and glitz,
all that kind of thing. And I think, of course, you get butterflies with that kind of thing. It's those big jobs that are the challenge, the real challenging ones are often the most exciting as well. And so long as you've got a good team around you and nice people around you, it's great because it's collaborative, and I'm still learning, and I will be, I'll continue to be learning something new on a shoot day every day that I work until I retire. I'm sure of that, because there'll always be something new that comes up, be it a new bit of technology, camera technology, or whatever, or a new method for filming this, or a new way of doing that. And that's really exciting. That's really, when you're faced with something like that. And 99% of the time, everything comes out really well. And then there's the 1% of jobs which, for some reason, don't. And that happens. It happens to everyone. Everyone has bad jobs every now and again. And those are the ones often that stay with you, but you can learn from them. And they're the ones that you get more lessons. Because they stay with you, they're the ones that you glean more stuff from. Whereas the ones that go really well, often
just become habit, I guess.
Partly, and often you sort of forget. You sort of forget about them because you've got another job coming up that you're concentrating on, and sort of it gets pushed to one side. So yeah, I mean, I there's still a lot for me to learn. There's still a lot for a lot of us to learn. But
what's your advice then to your younger self?
Tricky. I don't know. I feel quite happy with the path that I took. I think I would have probably thought about getting into the industry sooner, but I was having such a good time doing theatre in my 20s that that wasn't really an option.
And it can be any age.
Yeah,
it can be your advice to yourself was when you were seconding. It can be your advice to yourself before you even got into theatre. I don't actually mind where it is in your timeline.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've always there was a sort of a fork in the road for me when I was 16, when I set up my A-levels with the intention of going into BA pilot training.
Oh wow!
And I suppose I often wonder, when I finished my A-levels, I then decided to go off and study drama. Which is a little bit of a departure.
I want to act like a pilot.
And I don't regret it for 1 minute, but that's the kind of the one thing I do sometimes wonder, should I have often done that? But that's not really, I suppose it's not really advice. I think the only piece of advice I'd give is say yes more often. Because there's a lot of, being that little bit older when I was stepping up as a second, I think I was a little bit more kind of reticent about certain things. Maybe it might have been a question about the financials. of a certain job at a certain time when I was busy. I didn't want to sell myself for that, for that small amount of money for that particular job. Maybe there was something else going on, and I was like, no, I'm not good. I don't want to do that. For the most part, I think I made most of the right decisions, but I think there was some times where I could have been a little bit more open to kind of just say, fuck it, let's do it.
Sounds like good advice for those coming into the industry as well.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because you don't want to be the person who always does who does everything regardless of what the money is, because you've got to respect what your worth is. But I think the younger you are coming into the industry, the more flexibility you've got to do that. You can get out there and say yes, I'm going to do that. And I think the other bit of advice I'd give my younger self, and this is sort of slightly conditional upon if I'd have gone into the industry earlier, is to try and do a bit more in features than I did. I only worked on one big feature, and
wasn't right at the time.
I enjoyed it. No, I had a really good time. I learnt a lot from it, but it was, I don't know. For me, it was that thing of I wasn't willing to give up that large portions of time away from my life. 12, 16 weeks of... Which I did when I was touring in my 20s. And I think maybe I should have been a bit more open to that. So I think the advice would be just be more open to doing those things, because on a feature 12, 16 weeks down the line, you pop out the other end and you can get on with it again. It's you don't lose anything really by doing that. You only gain new experience.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice. And have you got, so having had the levels of experience you've had in theatre and TV and then commercials, have you got any little is there like a little funny story in any of those? Is there any a little silly story just to...
I was thinking about this. It's hard to pick them out. I think the only thing I can think of one of the things I can think of was the best shoot ever, which was... I was seconding at the time, and I wasn't long a second. I think I was maybe a year and a bit into seconding, and it was just this extraordinary job which we did on the Isles of Scilly, which I tried to dig out the call sheet for it a little while ago, but I know that on the running team for that there are two guys who are now established first ADs. It was helmed by the extraordinary Justin Travers, who's still he's one of the top commercials first out there. We all went out to the Isles of Scilly and filmed with the local community for an Adidas job, and it was the story was about the kids' football team were going to challenge the adults' football team
on the island.
Yeah. And there was two adults football teams on the island. Every season they start off by going up to the Garrison Field. Everyone lines up and they pick teams, and that's it for the season. They play each other 16 times apart from cup games.
Brilliant.
Anyway, so the idea was coach of the kids' team. He's taught them everything he can. He's decided to bring in some help, and all of the people we were filming, so there was no actors in it. It was all locals. It was all the local kids and people who were working with us while we were out there, helping us out and supporting us. And then we started smuggling in world-class football players.
Amazing, as you do.
As you do.
As Adidas can have the power.
So we had Steven Gerrard, we had David Beckham, Michael Ballack, Anderson.
So we're talking kind of mid to late 90s?
We're talking 2007.
2007,
yeah.
Okay.
Patrick Vieira.
Wow.
So I mean, big names at the time, really big names at the time, and all came out and were coming out to do some coaching with the kids team. And then, as well as that, we'd run around the island with them and shoot, them in the fish and chip shop, or with the with the bank manager.
I earn 500 grand a week. What can I do?
So it was the bank manager's house. Bank manager was a diehard Liverpool supporter.
So Steven Gerrard in his house. That's right.
And so the idea was, so he comes back from like an art department. They're in there sort of setting up, and everyone knows that we're filming. And
do they know who's coming?
No, well, they didn't know any of that because we had to confiscate all the kids' mobile phones.
Okay.
The players would fly into the airport. We'd get them onto our minibuses, and we'd drive them to the safe house where they'd hang out until we were ready for it. But obviously, as soon as we landed, the news started getting around the island.
Yeah,
they were there, which is why we had the kids' phones off them. But obviously, all the drivers, this buzz is building up. And the bank manager comes home from work. He's talking to the art department and saying, "So you're going to be filming a little bit in here?" The art department kind of doesn't know who knew what. So it was like, "Yeah. So Steven Gerrard's coming around. We're going to do a little scene with you. Your sons are bringing him back, and he's going to sleep on the sofa tonight." And he just froze, absolutely. And he's like, Steven Gerrard coming to my house? Yeah, they'll be here in about half an hour. We just got to get on with it. So there, kind of cue all the guys. Like, Steven Gerrard signs the foreheads of the two boys. You've got.
You're never washing those faces again.
Those whole 2 or 3 days would just filled with little sort of nuggets.
Beautiful moments.
The guy who was doing our catering at the Salonian Club, it's like a Rotary club down there. He was the chef. I remember him on the last day, striding down the street with his tray of sandwiches, absolutely proud as punch because David Beckham had signed 23 David Beckham on the chest of his chef's whites that he was wearing, and he could not look happier. It was one of those things. I've never done another job like it.
Just lovely, amazing feeling.
It was the energy and fun and joy that was on that job, and for those of us who are on it, it comes up, regularly.
Always got the Isle of Scillies.
Yeah, the Scilly Isles.
Scilly Isles, sorry.
Special job in the Scilly Isles. That was a special one. And for every one of those, there's 100 other jobs.
But
which
a lovely little light. That's kind of feels like a nice little lightning bolt then for the commercials world or for ADN as well on that job.
Yeah, I mean that was truly special. That job. That was a really nice one. I think. Yeah, I mean, again, the lightning bolt moment. It was very. The lightning bolt thing was really small for me. Not small, but it was really sort of seemingly insignificant. As a runner, kind of there's a thing of being nearby but not too close, so that you're close enough to react to something without being in the way. And I don't even remember what the shoot was, but I remember standing, kind of watching everything going on, stage 1, Black Island, for something or other, and just sort of looking around and realising the level of experience and skill and talent on that stage that I was kind of surrounded by, and that I had the ability to tap into and to talk to and to learn from. And that it was just simple. It's just simple as that. Going, actually, there's such an evolution to be had here in my own experience, and so much that we can learn from what's going on and from the people here, and that's going to be a different set of people tomorrow and a different set of people the next day. And it just felt like a proper treasure trove to sort of delve into.
Nice.
I think it was, that's probably when I realised it was the right place to be. And still learning.
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day. Well, look, we're getting kind of close to the end. So have you got any people or projects, personal projects or anything like that you want to give a shout out to?
there's one person I want to give a shout out to, and I've mentioned Justin already, but I need to mention Sean Cotter, who
The Lion of Judah.
Yeah, who was my first AD and mentor for many years. Absolutely legend in the industry, and without him, I certainly wouldn't be where I am today. And secondly, Lynn Hurley, who ran Red Diary Service for many years from when I joined until about 2 or 3 years ago. Who again was an incredible mentor to me, and without whom I would not be doing what I'm doing today.
Nice.
So to those two, thank you very much, and thanks.
Any final thoughts? Anything to leave us with?
Gone completely blank. Just treat every day on. I think the thing is to treat every day on set as a privilege, really, because it can be so precarious as a freelancer that you don't really know when your next job's going to be. You don't know who you're going to be working with or what you're going to be doing. So, we got to treat every day as a privilege. And the most important thing on a film set is respect for others, because they're an experienced, talented bunch of people, and everyone on that set is the best person on that set to do the job they're doing. So we got to respect that. Yeah, got to respect that and respect the people we work with, because they're all good people. And if they're a bit grumpy one day or another, some people are, then so be it. We're all human. Yeah. Something else might be going on in their lives, and
Nice.
Keep it one big happy family.
Yeah, film family. Well, look, thank you. So I guess that brings us to the end of another lovely podcast. Just massive thank you to Mr. Jay Lusser for coming again. Round 2, ding ding. Hopefully there isn't a round 3 and I've pressed all the right buttons that I need to. But if you want to check him out, go to jlusser.com. It's his first AD and website, so that is jlusser.com. I'll put it in the little text in wherever you're listening. And I guess Film Family, don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast on whatever platform you're listening to. Also, if you've got people that are film students and media students, tell them to go to thetimescheduler.com. It's where I'm kind of putting all of the bits that we're kind of collating with all these lovely, wonderful industry people and HODs. So go there, check that out. And until next time, that is a wrap. So that was a chat with the king or queen in the game. I give it a shout at the end so you all know the name. It's the Film Gods Podcast. The what? The Film God Podcast. This episode is sponsored by RSVP. RSVP brings together 2 established video playback companies into one powerhouse with over 50 years of on-set knowledge. The experienced and growing team are all skilled in the latest recording software with up-to-date HD video recording equipment, HD monitors, and HD wireless packages. RSVP understand that the requirements for every shoot are different, so for a tailored quote, get in touch at info@rsvp.london.